Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Keith Tomlinson. I'm the longtime former manager here at Meadowlark Botanical Gardens. I now work as a staff naturalist for the Regional Park Authority, and I was asked to give this tour for you all, and I'm really thrilled to do that because we know right now we have some restrictions for people getting out and all that good stuff. So we are here at Meadowlark Botanical Gardens in Vienna, Virginia. We're only probably about 15 miles from your location, so we're pretty close by. Many of you have probably been to Brookside, living in Maryland. We're sort of the Brookside on the Virginia side. We're a little bit bigger and we're somewhat younger. We're just over 30 years old, and Brookside is 50 years old this year. It's a wonderful public garden. We are different in the sense that not only are we bigger, we have a big rolling property and 3 large lakes, many beautiful ornamental plant collections, as well as some very focused native plant collections. That's one of the things that really differentiates us from Brookside. The history at Meadowlark is fascinating. I think you'll appreciate it. The property was bought in 1935 by Gardner Means and Caroline Ware for $6,500. It's valued at about $1 million an acre today. Caroline and Gardner were Harvard-trained academics. She was a social historian. He was an economist. And they moved down here to begin to consult on the New Deal with the FDR administration. And they were Bostonians. They never thought that they would stay here, but lo and behold, they got to the capital city. They realized what an amazing place it was, and they spent the rest of their lives here. If you read their work, Gardner was a co-author on a seminal book in economics called The Structure of the American Economy, published in about 1939. Caroline, who kept her maiden name when they were married in 1923, was one of the leaders in women's studies in the Americas, and I mean North America as well as Central and South America. So they were people with a remarkable impact in their field. If you read some of their work, you will see that they had some socialist leanings. They were really like social democrats, so to speak. And as a result, as they got older, they decided not to sell their 100-acre property to developers, but to give it to the Regional Park Authority to create a public garden. And that's why we have Meadowlark today. Annual visitation is close to 200,000 people. There's a major holiday light show like the one that Brookside has had for many years. Naturally, we think the Meadowlark show is a little bit better. It is bigger, and we invite everybody to come out and see it. It's fully accessible for folks with limited mobility, and the garden itself is really fully successful for limited mobility. So don't have any fears about coming out here and being able to see a lot of different stuff. So what we'll do today is we'll look at some of the various highlights as we go through and give you a really good idea as to what you would see here at Meadowlark on a late summer day like today. Well, here we are, friends, at what we call the Bold Garden, B-O-L-D. It is just for horticultural fun. This garden is strictly a summer feature. All the plants in it are tropical and go inside or get mulched during the winter. So it's a strictly seasonal garden, but it's so much fun because all the plants go in the ground in the first week of May, and they're all about this big. And here you are now where they're reaching their zenith. There are actually some bananas in here, all kinds of interesting relatives of the amaranth family, all kinds of cool tropical plants that belong to the elephant-ear family, the alocasia family. So this is just for pure aesthetic fun. And then if we look over in this direction, that's the atrium, which is the event facility here at Meadowlark. That opened 22 years ago this month. And the day it opened, it became the premier public garden event venue in the Washington region and remains so today. During a regular year, events book normally 18 months in advance. As you can imagine, there are a lot of weddings, but there are also big anniversary parties, there are mitzvahs, all kinds of good stuff. So the atrium is an amazing place to have an event. And of course, as you look out onto all of these beautiful landscape gardens, it's just incredible what the setting is like to have an event there. Hey everybody, I wanted to share this with you. So this is the biggest news feature here at Meadowlark. It is a lovely glass house, as you can see. This was a gift from a local foundation a couple of years ago, and it will ultimately be developed into a exhibit of plants from Mediterranean regions around the world. A lot of times people say, well, Mediterranean plants, why are they so special? And in fact, they are special. From a horticultural standpoint, they can actually take pretty cold temperatures, and they're pretty easy on water. So this building will be managed in such a way that it doesn't need to be 70 degrees at night. It can actually go down to, say, 45 degrees at night, and it will be fairly energy efficient to run. And then when we think about Mediterranean regions from a geographic standpoint, it's not just the Mediterranean basin. Mediterranean plant habitats are also found in coastal Chile in South America, far southwestern Australia near the regional capital of Perth, and also much of coastal California is considered Mediterranean. And of all the plants that grow in those regions, there are some remarkably unique and beautiful plants, many of which you might recognize. And of course, the trademark plant of the Mediterranean basin is the culinary olive. And there will be a culinary olive in this collection. A collection like this takes time to develop, years in fact. So it'll take a little time, but it's going to be a really, really beautiful feature. And they just finished construction. My suspicion is that it will probably open officially sometime in the spring of 2021. Well, we think it's always important this time of year to stop by the butterfly garden. This garden was developed a long time ago, about 25 years ago, with the express intention of providing a place for butterflies to nectar and also to find host plants to lay their eggs on. So a bunch of different plants in here, some native, some non-native. Butterflies tend to become most active about this time of year, late summer, early fall. And this is a very, very active area. We have a good butterfly fauna here, to include monarchs, of course, but swallowtails and many kinds of skippers and admirals and painted ladies. Really, really a diverse group of animals. If we look at insects in general, they are the most diverse group of animals in the world, with well over 1 million described species, and probably that many that are not yet described by science. So that's pretty amazing when you compare the fact that there are less than 5,000 different mammals in the world. There are about 10,000 different birds in the world. And then you get to the insects, and oh my goodness, way over 1 million different insects. A remarkable and really, really important group of animals. So this is one reason we have the butterfly garden here, is not only to see these beautiful creatures, but to be able to teach people about their importance. is one of my favorite spots in the garden, sort of from a historical standpoint and from a botanical standpoint. This is the conifer garden, and the whole space behind me is filled with different conifers or pine trees or cone-bearing plants from around the world. Many of them are hybridized by a remarkable guy named Albert Paulson. And Al Paulson lived in Falls Church, and he had a nursery in Great Falls, not far from here. Al was an amazing guy. He was a conifer expert. He also happened to be a dentist and taught at Georgetown University when they had a dental school there. He was also a two-star Navy admiral. And he was one of the sweetest people I've ever met in my 40 years of working in the environmental and outdoor education and conservation field. Al would come out here in his beat-up old 1980 white Ford pickup truck with his pith helmet on, and he would prune these conifers right up into his early 90s. Al passed away about 12 years ago now, but we dedicated this bench to him, and the story is that when Al had his nursery in Great Falls, he was getting ready to sell the property, and the question was, what was he going to do with all his prized plants? And a friend of his said, well, you know what? I heard they're developing this public garden over there in Vienna. So they came over here, they spoke with my predecessor, and he said, you know what? I'd like to donate my entire conifer collection to your garden. And that's what he did. He was a remarkable guy, Al Paulson. So a big part of the Korean Bell Garden is creating this collection of Northeast Asian plants. Sometimes people will say, well, why Northeast Asian plants? Well, there are a couple of reasons. One is Northeast Asia has a climate that's very similar to Eastern North America, so the vast majority of the plants will grow fine here. The other thing is, it's even a little more exciting, is that Northeast Asia is far more diverse for the number of plants that are found there than that are found in Eastern North America, even though they have the similar climates. The reason for that is pretty straightforward, is that North America was very heavily glaciated during the last ice age and lost a lot of the plant diversity that was here before the ice age. Alternatively, Northeast Asia was not that heavily glaciated, in fact was not glaciated in many areas, and it retained all of this pre-glacial plant diversity. So for example, some of our all-time favorite garden plants, hosta, not native in Eastern North America, even though they grow great here, all native to Northeast Asia. Also many trees that are native to Northeast Asia. For example, the Yoshino cherries that we see around the mall around downtown, they were a gift from the nation of Japan, as you know, but the reality is their genetic history is in the Korean Peninsula, where they were discovered and hybridized during the Japanese occupation of the Korean Peninsula. I want to point out this one plant here called paperleaf, or Edgeworthia. This is very handsome green shrub with an almost spinach-like leaf. It's related to Daphnes, which you may recall from the ornamental plant trade. Now, it's deciduous, so it will lose all its leaves over the winter. But the most curious thing happens, it blooms with no leaves on it and has these pendulous or hanging little white flowers that smell like gardenias. It is a most exquisite plant, Edgeworthia. A great example of that amazing diversity of plants in Northeast Asia as compared to Eastern North America. Yeah, didn't I say that? Oh.
Because that was really interesting, but it's okay.
So I want to thank everybody for giving me the opportunity to do this tour with you, and which I was able to arrange through Susan Devine, whom you all know, which is great. And you know, I think that the important thing about a public garden is that it's open to everybody, that everybody can come and enjoy it. And you might be surprised to find that in the United States every year, more people go to zoos, aquariums, and public gardens than all professional and amateur sporting events combined. What does that tell us? What it really tells us is that people love nature. There's a whole theory about this by a famous scientist at Harvard called Ed Wilson, called the biophilia hypothesis, is that humans are really predisposed to love and interact with the natural world because of our history with the natural world. So I hope you'll have the opportunity to take a look at the garden. You can also find some outstanding photographs at the website. That's at www.novaparks.org. And there you'll find the section there for Meadowlark. Meadowlark, like Brookside, is part of a regional park system. So the garden operates within that park system. It's a great place to visit, and I really appreciate you all coming out today. Right behind me is Lake Caroline. It's the largest lake with the beautiful gazebo out in the middle of it. It's just a really, really great place to come and relax. It, by the way, friends, is surrounded by Yoshino cherries, which are the same cherry trees as downtown. So there is quite a beautiful spring cherry tree bloom here at Meadowlark. Not as big as downtown, but there's more parking. Thanks very much for the opportunity to spend this time with you, and have a great day.